Good morning, Mayor and Council, and definitely pleased to be here this morning to present the FY16 proposed budget for the Public Transportation and Parking Department to you. I have a few staff actually that I'd like to introduce. I have Melissa Rousey, our Financial Services Manager, with us this morning. Kevin Mulcahy, our new Assistant Director, with us this morning, who joined us in January. And of course, Michael Scroggins, our Manager of Marketing, Customer Relations, and Technology, is helping out with the presentation. I wanted to take just a minute and just point out our title slide to you this morning. I hope you recognize it. It's a photo taken in Automobile Alley looking south on Broadway. And of course, the reason I mention that is that's one of the areas that our new night service now operates in. So our Route 23N provides evening service until midnight up and down Broadway. So just wanted to point that out. We're definitely excited about our night service and have some more information in the presentation that we'll share with you. One thing, I think we as a department recognize is that public transportation and parking services, we feel very strongly are both important to the economic well-being of our community, but also as important are really quality of life amenities for our residents. And in FY15, we feel like we had a very productive year as a department, and we had several major milestones that I'd like to talk about just a little bit as we set the stage moving forward into the FY16 budget. And so the first milestone that you'll see there on the slide is, of course, our system enhancements. And I know we've talked about that a lot, but we essentially kicked off those system enhancements, which were recommendations from the Nelson-Nygaard Transit System Analysis. We kicked those off at the very end of the FY14 fiscal year. But the thing that's been neat about this last fiscal year is we've had those enhancements in place for the entire year. So we've been able to continually monitor, gather data, and see what kind of impact those enhancements have had month to month. And I'll share some slides with you later that will look at that in a little bit more detail, but it's been very positive. Ridership gains are there, customer feedback is there, and so we're very pleased with how the system enhancements have been accepted by our customers. Of course, then later that year, 1st of August, we added Bike Share, the Spokies Bike Share program, to EMBARK's family of services. And, we look at Bike Share as really another piece of the multimodal transit system, and we want to encourage people to think of Bike Share as a means to complete the last mile or that last leg of a transit trip. So we're really concentrating in trying to promote that. In addition, we have brought bicycle transit systems on board to help us manage the Spokies Bike Share program. They manage other systems across the country. We're also going through a rebranding with Spokies, so next month we're going to unveil the new colors and kind of a fresh look. We're keeping the Spokies name, but are freshening it up a little bit and have our first planned station expansion also coming up in July. And then real quickly, the last thing I'll mention about Spokies is we're working with the Emerson High School in part of supporting a mentorship program that they have. And some of you may have seen the article in the Gazette, but basically Emerson has developed a mentorship program where youth come in, work with an adult, and the project that the mentors and the youth work on together is bike repair. And so, of course, we have plenty of bikes for them to work on, and we're very pleased to be able to provide those to them. They won't run out of projects, but it's working very well, and we're very glad to be able to participate in that. And then in August, later that month, we added 30-minute frequencies to Route 8. And although we received a lot of positive comments about our system enhancements, one of the things we did hear from our customers was, wow, we would like to have 30-minute frequency all day on 8. And so with some of the additional funding that was provided in this last budget year by Council, we ended up adding a bus to that route. We now have 30-minute frequency all day long on Route 8. Route 8 essentially runs north out of the transit center, I believe, to 63rd Street, and then all the way out to Lyrewood Lane. So 30-minute frequency on that route. And then in November, of course, we opened up the Arts District parking garage, adding about 802 parking spaces to the inventory of structured parking in downtown Oklahoma City. And then one of the last milestones we had was more bus system enhancements. We, again, taking the additional funding that was provided by City Council in the FY16 fiscal year, we added frequency to Route 11. As you'll recall, Route 11 is our south side crosstown. It's continuing to grow in popularity, ridership, and we've made that bus now 30 minutes frequency all day as well. And then something that Oklahoma City hasn't seen in quite some time is fixed route bus service at night. And so we launched our pilot program in January, adding evening fixed route bus service until midnight on a north side crosstown, which we refer to as Route 23N, and then the south side crosstown, which is Route 11. And so, again, we couldn't be more excited about the opportunity to continue implementing system enhancements. One other thing before we get into some of our strategic business planning and budget issues is I wanted to just kind of remind us of some of the feedback we received from our citizens. And in the last citizen survey, as you will recall, transit continued to rank high when citizens were asked what areas of city services do you think need the most emphasis. And so, again, we continue to rank high in that area, only behind the condition of city streets, the ease of travel and getting around town, and of course, police officers. So having provided a quick update of some accomplishments and some citizen feedback, I'd really like to kind of begin our discussion by mentioning that as many of you are aware, our budget is basically built on our strategic business plan. And we are confident that our FY16 budget not only promotes or supports the goals that we've identified in our strategic business plan, but also supports City Council's priority to develop a transportation system that works for all citizens. Our budget begins on page C277 in your budget book. And in that section of the budget book, you can find our department mission statement. You'll notice there's an org chart available for you to review. We have a breakdown of expenditures and positions, along with kind of a description and a purpose statement of each one of our programs, and then, of course, the performance measures that support those. So as we get into the budget, one of the things I'll talk about a little bit here is our department issues. And I'd like to just note that we as a department think of these department issues really as opportunities for us to proactively identify some of the challenges and obstacles that we're going to be looking at in the next 2 to 5 years. And so, you know, the whole process is developed around identifying those challenges, kind of developing some high-level strategies to address those challenges, and then measuring the results of those through our strategic result performance measures. And so I'll try to spend a little bit of time talking about each of our 4 issues and giving you a sense of some of the strategies and the performance goals we've been able to accomplish. So the first issue that I want to talk about is the issue of state of good repair. And of course, this is a big issue for our department. Trying to continually maintain our vehicles and our facilities, both our transit facilities as well as our parking facilities. And so in terms of some of the strategies that we've implemented for maintaining that state of good repair, well, one is, and we've talked about this before as well, but one of the priorities we have is to continue to seek funding alternatives for bus replacement. That's a big challenge for us, and I'll go into a little bit more detail later on that. The other thing that kind of rolls into state of good repair is making sure that all of our equipment, our buses in particular, are outfitted with latest technology, and then that technology is being maintained. You know, it's amazing when you look at one of our fixed route buses today, there's high resolution security cameras on those buses, there's electronic fare boxes, there's AVL or automatic vehicle locating systems on those buses, so there's a lot more into maintaining that equipment than just, you know, making sure the chassis is maintained and rolling down the road. And so we've done a really good job recently in being able to implement and upgrade some of our latest technology. So one of our strategies is to continue to expand the skill set of our supervisors so that we can get the most out of that technology, in particular the AVL system, so that we are using that to run the most dependable and most efficient bus system that we can. couple of other things that relate to maintaining a state of good repair, of course, is we want to continue to replace outdated parking meters, and we work alongside of Public Works, and as different pieces of Project 180 are completed, as you're well aware, we go back and replace the more traditional meters with the electronic multi-space meters. And then also we continue our capital improvement program, particularly with our parking garages, and I have a few examples I'll show you of some projects that we've completed recently. In terms of results for addressing the state of good repair issue, there's a lot of measures that we can come up with, but we think one of them that kind of signifies our ability to maintain a state of good repair, particularly with our vehicles, is our ability to deliver on-time performance. Now, there's a lot of things that go into on-time performance, but obviously we have to have operable buses out on the road every day to ensure that. So I did want to talk a little bit about our on-time performance this morning and let you know, and you'll see this in your budget book, but we are basically on pace to finish the year overall at 66% on time. And I want to spend just a minute talking about that on-time performance, because when we met last year and looked at our budget presentation, we were reporting a 92% on-time performance. But as I've mentioned in the past, we've changed the way we're measuring that on-time performance pretty dramatically from year to year. In fact, the way we're measuring that now is we're using our AVL technology, and we're actually able to determine whether a bus hits each of the over 1,200 stops in our system, whether a bus reaches that within that 6-minute window that we allow. And so if you'll remember, a bus is considered to be on time if it's no more than 1 minute early and no more than 5 minutes late. So we have that 6-minute window. So although the numbers have declined, we think it is a much more accurate way, a much better representation of what our customers actually experience, and it gives us hard data to manage to. So to give you a sense of kind of how we've progressed, when we first started emphasizing this in July, the first of the fiscal year, we were at about 60%. We have steadily improved our on-time performance, topping out in January at about 74%, 1% below our target of 75. And then we've had a couple of months where we're in the 70, 71 percentile. So, this is an area that we can continue to make improvements in, but one that we feel very strongly about, in that we have a lot of confidence in our system to be able to monitor it and manage to it now. And then in terms of reliability of our parking meters, you'll notice we have virtually no downtime with our electronic parking meters. That's not to say we don't have some problems from time to time, but usually they're a pretty quick fix, and downtime is minimal on our electronic parking meters. So going into a little bit of detail on our aging fleet, I wanted to provide City Council with kind of an update as to our funding plan for our replacement buses. If you look at our fleet right now, the fixed route buses, the large 40-foot buses you see, we have about 18 buses that are past or have reached their useful life. So that's 31% of our fleet that is essentially ready for replacement. Now, to put that in context, of those 18, 3 of them are 2002 models, so they're about a year overdue. 15 of those are 2003 models, and they are just now coming due for replacement. So in terms of our plan to begin replacing those buses, we have about $4 million accumulated from our current year federal grant along with prior year grant awards to put towards the replacement of about 9 buses. That'll leave us, of course, with 9 unfunded, and if things do not change in terms of federal funding, we're looking at replacing a couple of buses each year from here forward. So it's going to take us a little while to get through that full 18. Now, one thing that we are excited about is we met as a COPPA Transportation Committee last week and have decided for our new bus purchases, we are going to be looking at CNG buses. So we are beginning the process now of basically bringing in a consultant to kind of help us do some further analysis on the cost benefits of CNG, as well as begin working on the development of a station and the budget required for that station. All right, and then also in the areas of state of good repair, the Santa Fe garage, you see I have a picture of that on your slide here. We currently have a project underway at the Santa Fe garage to replace all 4 of the elevators in the 2 towers. And I'm pleased to report that the first phase of that project, the 2 south elevators, are scheduled to be done in about 4 weeks. And then we will begin phase 2, which could take, obviously several months. Don't have a definitive date on that yet, but nonetheless, it'll be great to have new elevators in the Santa Fe garage. One of the other projects on the parking side of our operations that we completed this last year was some concrete rehabilitation and some weatherproofing at the Sheridan Walker garage. And if you'd been in that Sheridan Walker garage recently before we started our project, you probably would have noticed there were several areas on the parking decks where the concrete had basically broke away and there was some exposed rebar. We went in and we replaced all that. We also put a waterproofing membrane on the top floor of the garage. And that project itself was about a $400,000 project. All right, moving on to our next issue. Our next issue really speaks to the ongoing challenge of recruiting, developing, and retaining our employees. And I know that that's an issue that probably is shared among several departments, but it is one that we feel like raises to the level where it should be one of our main department issues, something that we continue to focus our efforts on. Some of the strategies that we have in trying to maintain and develop that workforce is one is we want to continue with our quarterly safety training meetings. And we do this, we do many different types of training throughout the year, but we have mandatory training quarterly for all of our bus operators. We do some customer service training. We do some focused training in the areas such as wheelchair securement, ADA sensitivity. We train on driving in winter conditions, bike lane safety. There's a multitude of different things that we touch on throughout the year. So we do think that's very important in helping us continue to develop our workforce. One of the other things we do is we have developed over the last couple of years what we call retention team meetings. And, for our bus operators in particular, we do have, some somewhat significant turnover on occasion in the ranks of the bus operators, and we initiated this retention team process where we will, as a group, evaluate our new hires on about a 45, 65, and 85-day basis. And then if there's any, challenges or areas where we need to coach or counsel employees, we're able to bring them in during that probationary period. And although, and I'll get to our turnover here, or I'll just go ahead and talk about our turnover now. Actually, although our turnover for a department as a whole for FY15 is projected to be about 17%, when you look into the numbers and you look at just our bus operators, we've actually decreased the turnover in our bus operator positions from about 18% the previous year to about 14.8% during this current year. So we think, among some other things we've been doing, but we think the retention team meetings have helped with that. And then another strategy we have is in order to maintain that workforce, we want to make sure employees feel like they have a safe place to work. And what we were able to accomplish within this last year was install basically an access control system at our South May facility as well as our transit center, enhanced security cameras, and then in addition to that, enhanced alarm monitoring. And this is also in keeping with FTA's priorities for safe and secure environments. And then as far as performance measures go, I've kind of talked about turnover already, but one of the things that we look at, when we as a staff say, what's a really good indicator of a well-developed and trained workforce, one of the things is safety. That applies to both the bus operators, our mechanics. We want to have a very safe operation. And so one of the things we look at is our accidents. And what I can share with you is that for FY15, we're essentially on pace to finish at about 2.24 accidents per 100,000 miles. So that translates to about 52 or 3 accidents in total, and then about 54% of that amount are what we classify as non-preventable. In other words, it was not necessarily our operator's fault. And one of our most common non-preventable accidents, of course, is one of our buses being rear-ended when they're stopped to pick up people. It's just, unfortunately, our most common non-preventable type accident. And then on the next slide here, one of the things we do, again, in supporting and developing our workforce is we're always looking for ways to try to recognize employees. And so I believe it's about the second year in a row here, we have recognized National Transit Driver Appreciation Day. And of course, you see, we call it the Bus Operator Appreciation Day, but we were able to celebrate that March 18th. And the way we did that this year is we had our administrative staff, myself included, and some of the folks that I introduced you to this morning. We rode some buses, we stationed ourselves at the transit center, and basically we handed out thank you cards to our customers and asked them, of course, if they were willing or wanted to just write a thank you note or a word of encouragement to our bus operators. And so we collected about 165 of those cards during that day, compiled them into a notebook and placed them in our South May facility for operators to take a look at. So I thought it was a very successful event, and that's something that we'll obviously continue to do in one way or another moving forward. All right, our next issue is that of sustainable growth and service development. And of course, this issue really speaks at our challenge to provide multimodal transit services, but then also to continue to try to narrow that gap between the services we're able to provide as a transit agency and the ones that are really demanded by our citizens. And so as far as the strategies go that we have towards addressing that sustainable growth is, one, we want to maximize ridership through our additional system enhancements. And I think we have, at least over the last few years, a pretty good track record of doing that. The other thing, and I've mentioned this before, but is in the presentation this morning, but that is to seek funding alternatives for timely replacement of buses. And that's a repeat, but that strategy really affects two of our issues: maintaining a state of good repair and trying to keep up with the demands of service. Really go back to being able to replace our buses in a timely manner. So when we look at the effectiveness of our strategies in those areas, really the best way to roll that up in our opinion is to look at our ridership. What has our ridership done, and is it an indicator that we are able to grow, and are we growing at a sustainable rate? And so I have a few slides I wanted to share with you to give you a sense of our ridership this morning. This first slide is our riders per bus service hour, and you can see the green line there is our weekday service, the orange line is our Saturday service, and we have about a 5-year comparison for you to take a look at. Now, the riders per service hour won't necessarily tell you how many people are riding the bus, or what we average in a typical month or day, but what it is a good measure of is efficiency, and that is how many riders are on a bus during any given service hour. And so obviously, if you think about it from a resource perspective, we use the same amount of resources to drive a bus for an hour half full as we do totally full, and that's kind of the concept. We want to maximize those riders per service hour. Looking back at our transit system analysis that was done by Nelson Nygaard, when we compared to peer cities, our peer cities came in at about 20 to 20.5 riders per service hour. So we have a little bit of work to do, but I think what I would like to point out from these numbers is really just drilling into the weekday service FY 2014 to FY 2015. And the reason I say that is because with the system enhancements that we implemented in 2015, we increased our revenue hours by about 8.5%. And so normally what we would experience or expect is when you're adding that many service hours, initially your riders per hour are going to decline. And that's because it just simply takes people a little while to get used to the new service or adjust their travel habits or maybe attract new riders. What we haven't seen is we have not seen that with this latest round of enhancements. In fact, we've actually been able to maintain our riders per service hour despite the fact that we've increased total revenue hours by about 8.5%. So I think, again, that's just a really good indicator of how well the system enhancements have been received. The next slide here is our average weekday ridership, and this will kind of help give you a sense of how many people are using the bus on a daily basis on our Monday through Friday service. And you can see that we've had many months this year where we've exceeded 10, 11,000 trips on a daily basis. But again, what you're seeing here is the orange line is actually our FY16 average daily ridership, pre-service enhancements. The kind of blue colored line is the FY15 average weekly ridership. And so, of course, the takeaway there is that we've been able to outpace or exceed average daily ridership each month since launching our service enhancements when we compare to the previous year. And then looking at our night shift our night shift ridership, you can see that we have about 4 months of data that we're able to look at here. And on our Route 23 in, we started at about 1,600 passenger trips cumulatively during the month when the service was first launched, and now we're well over 2,000 cumulative passenger trips. And you can see a similar trend with Route 11 starting at 677 and finishing up the last couple of months around 1,000. Now, the one I have noted on the slide in kind of a blue color right next to the month, the riders per service hour. And, we only have 4 months of data, so it's really, pretty preliminary. But I know when we were looking at this last year, one of the questions that council had for us was, well, how are we going to know this night service is a success? And at that time, our reply was, and our reply still is, it's a very limited service. It's only 2 routes. We really don't know how well it's going to be received. But if we could at least average half of the riders per service hour at night that we do during the day, we would consider that a pretty good success for our first year doing this with 2 routes. And so you can see the riders per service hour has steadily grown. We started at about 5.7 total for those 2 routes and finished just under 8 in May. So we're almost to that 9 target that we were actually kind of shooting for.
Is the difference in riders between the 2 routes similar for the daytime also? Because, the 23 in is more than double.
Yeah, it's going to be similar for the daytime. 23 and actually 5, which I'll talk about in a little bit, are our 2 most productive routes. And so, yeah, when you look at the daytime numbers, 23 is about half of what 11 is.
Okay.
Yep. All right. And so our last issue that we'll talk about is our community relations issue. And this issue is really our challenge to continue to understand what our community's expectations are, the changes in those expectations, and try to make sure we have or provide the best overall customer service or customer experience. And so looking at our strategies for addressing our community relations issue, we definitely want to continue to improve customer satisfaction through enhanced amenities. That could be technology, that could be bus shelters. There's lots of different amenities that we can add to the transit system. We want to maintain clean vehicles and facilities. That's very important, particularly with people that we're trying to get to try transit for the first time. We want to have that good first impression. And then we want to partner with community organizations and continue to support business development. So some of the results that we look at are customer satisfaction measures. And we were fortunate enough last summer to be able to partner with the planning department and with OU Health Sciences Center. And they brought a project to us and said, we want to survey EMBARK ridership and determine what are the impacts or what is the opinion of the riders since implementing the service changes. And so, again, we do appreciate the planning department really kind of taking the lead on this and helping us with this project. And I have just a few of the survey questions that I'll share with you this morning. So initially, we asked them, what is your overall impression of the route changes? And you can see that about 52% of the respondents indicated that the route changes were better. We had about 16% the same, and 20% indicated that they did not like the route changes as well as our previous arrangement. When asked, though, about better access to grocery stores, you can see about 63% of our riders responded saying, yes, they do have better access. 25% said not applicable, so maybe they don't use transit for the grocery store, and then 12% indicated no. When we asked about access to better or better access to health care facilities. 55% indicated, of course, that the route changes did improve their access to health facilities. 32% not applicable, 13% no. And then this one here, when we asked about the cleanliness of buses, 75% of the customers agreed that yes, the buses are clean, which again is very important to us. And then one of the other things I wanted to talk a little bit about as far as amenities go is provide you a quick update with the status of our bus shelter project. We've talked a lot about some of our technology and so forth in the past, but haven't had an opportunity to really update council on our bus shelters. And so what you have before you here is a map of all of the proposed bus shelters. There's about 45 shelters that have either been completed as part of the original 31 that we've discussed a few different times. We have about 15 that are in progress. The PO issued means that we have the funding secured, and we're basically waiting on the contractor to start pouring the sidewalk or pouring the concrete pads, so they're all in process. And then we have actually 16 additional shelters proposed, and those will be, we expect this map hopefully to be completed over the next 12 to 18 months. So to kind of put that in perspective, we had, before we started this shelter project, we had about 75 shelters in our bus system. We're adding another 45, so we're increasing the total number of shelters by about 60%. And I would say this is our 12 to 18 month kind of plan. We don't intend to just stop when we get all these done either, but this would give you an idea of what's going to be coming in the next year or so. The other thing I'll point out is here's a picture in the bottom right of the presentation of a shelter that we installed near Penn Square Mall, right in front of the Cheesecake Factory there. And I'll just remind everyone that all of our shelters now are of this design. They're the three-sided, they have the trash receptacle, they have the large concrete pad, and they're all ADA compliant. So we're not installing shelters that obviously are not ADA compliant. And then one other thing to talk about in terms of community relations is the Arts District Garage. I mentioned we had opened that in 2014, adding additional parking spaces. And the effect that those parking spaces had on our occupancy is reflected in this next slide. We finished FY16 at about 119% occupancy, added 800 spaces, and we're now at 110. And in talking with Debbie Holtzclaw, our parking manager this morning, we are actively working on our waiting list for the Arts District Garage. So continue to be demands at this time for parking in downtown Oklahoma City.
What is our next parking garage to be completed?
Well, we don't have plans for one right now. We're looking at the convention center as a potential parking garage.
So COPTA doesn't, but there are private sector parking garages under construction and rehab.
Yes, yeah. Yes, there are actually two coming.
Actually, and so that doesn't go into these numbers.
No, that's
okay.
Exactly right. This is just
COPTA's.
Public parking.
Okay.
But you have a parking study that's being done.
That's right.
That we're working on at this point in time.
Okay.
So on the 802 spaces, there's a waiting list, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is right.
All right, and then as far as Santa Fe is concerned, what are we spending on the 4 elevators? I know I see all the events and the Thunder games, and those elevators get a lot of usage.
Yeah, that elevator project is about $1 million project to replace those 4 elevators. Yep.
Thank you.
Jason, while we're asking questions about numbers, do you know what the monthly cost is of the night service?
The monthly cost, I'll get it for you.
Could you get that for me?
I'd
just be curious. I figured
do some math and figure that out based on hours and the budget.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Jason,
right.
thank
yes.
you.
Okay.
Mayor, may I just make a couple
sure.
comments? My observations, Jason, is that the buses are very clean. When I've never experienced a problem. You can notice a difference between a bus that's on its final year of service and the newer ones. So I hope we can continue to improve those. The drivers, I found, are always very nice to me and to all the riders. So it's a great experience. Now, when you talked about when you start your presentation, you said here here are some items that the public wants to see, such as ease of travel, improved police and all that.
Right.
All of that could be accomplished with greater use of the public transportation system. And I just like every opportunity to share these numbers. Again, if the focus should be on encouraging people who don't have to use public transportation to use it. And you can drive from your home to your nearest bus stop, park, and take the bus on in. If half of the people who work downtown rode the bus, and you didn't tell us your budget for next year.
Yeah, I'm just about to
Yeah.
get to it,
Oh,
but I will.
I think I interrupted
I'm
Jason
sorry.
and gave the impression he was
well,
done.
let me just throw this out
Yeah,
since
go
I'm
ahead.
talking.
Not done.
If half the people who work downtown rode the bus, that would generate $15 million. And so see what your budget would do if you had a $15 million increase to it. You could put in all sorts of bus shelters, increase the usage and the coverage of our bus system with that additional $15 million. Plus, it's going to lower the demand for downtown parking. I know we kind of like to have 110% occupancy on our parking garages, but it would serve so many purposes. It would eliminate or improve parking opportunities downtown, ease travel, taking 20,000 cars off the street, and reduce the demand for police officers by reduced traffic. So I'm just saying again, and we'll always try to say it, if we can convince people who don't have to use the public transportation system to at least try it and then become, a regular user, it would serve so many purposes and provide so many benefits. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so looking at the budget, and I'll run through these slides quickly. Our combined operating budget for the department, which includes transit, parking, river, bike share, $38.7 million in total. And obviously you can see there that the majority of that is to support transit operations at 75%. Also, I do need to point out that the numbers that are on this slide here are different than the ones in your budget book, because what we have here is a combined budget of the city and the trust. And we typically always present the budget in this fashion, but again, just as a reminder. Our transit funding sources, our total budget for transit is about $29.5 million. As you can see, the majority of our operations are supported by the city's general fund at 59%, 25% of our operations through federal grants, our formula grant, state about $1 million, fares at 11% of our budget are about $3.2 million, and then we have some other revenue sources of around $500,000. This next slide will just give you a sense of what the change has been in our funding sources, and really, again, the takeaway here is the federal amount has been relatively stagnant. All of the enhancements that we've been able to accomplish over the last few years have come really at additional city contributions to transit.
And we should note the small amount that we get from the state there, which is much different than what most states provide for public transit.
That's absolutely right, and it too, as you can see, has been stagnant at about $1 million. Parking funding sources, our parking budget in total is about $8.2 million. You can see that daily transit parkers make up just under $1 million at about 12% of our budget. Event parking is a large revenue source for us at $1.7 million, or about 21% of our budget. And then, of course, our monthly parkers provide a majority of the revenue for the system at about $5.5 million, or 66% of our budget. In terms of highlighted budget changes, we have 320.
Jason, I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to point out, there is no general fund dollars involved in the parking system. So just want to point that out.
In terms of highlighted budget changes, we do have $328,000 in our budget to support the ongoing efforts of the regional transit dialogues, who are certainly making some progress in working with ACOG to further the Regional Transit Authority. I know the mayor and council have been very supportive of that. Our night service expansion.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
What's the timeline on the Regional Transit Authority? Can you quickly walk us through that process?
Well, I think, the quick answer is it's still being developed, but I think the big step is really going to be taken next year with kind of the development of that organization, whatever it's going to look like, and some funds to, be able to enable that organization to start looking at options for regional transit, doing a system plan, and those kinds of things.
All right, thank you.
Okay. On the night service expansion, I'll talk about that in a minute. We have about $250,000 in additional budget to expand our night service. We had the budget transfer associated with the bike share, now that it is part of our family of services. We're adding a system support specialist position, which is an IT position, and that position will help us maintain and support all the technology that I've mentioned. And then we were able to reduce our fuel budget by just under $500,000 due to the decline in diesel prices. And then the next slide here will give you an idea of the next enhancements we're going to make with our evening bus service. We're going to expand Route 5, which is a north side route starting at the Transit Center. You can see making its way up Classen and Western, serving the Quail Springs Mall and Mercy Hospital. As I had mentioned earlier, this is actually neck and neck every month. 23 and 5 are our top 2 performing routes. You can see on average we provide about 1,100 passenger trips per day, Monday through Friday, on this route. So we will extend this route to providing service until midnight, and with our other routes we'll have 1 hour frequency from roughly 7 to midnight as compared to 30 minutes during the day. The next route we have recommended for further enhancements is Route 13, and this is a south side route, again, as you can see, starting at the Transit Center, running south on Western, serving the Oklahoma City Community College there over to the west. And so not only have we added a link stop to the community college, but now the community college will have fixed route buses running until midnight. And then you can see over east to Santa Fe, where there's a large Walmart over in that area. Route 13 averages about 525 passenger trips on a daily basis, currently operating at 30 minutes. And again, this route we will extend to run until midnight with 1 hour frequencies during the evening. And then this next map here will just give you kind of a sense of what our total, or what our overall system map for night service will look like. We have the 23 and 11 that are the east and west routes. We have the 5 and the 13 that are the north and south routes. And then what I want to point out is you can see the little chain link type symbol on this map. Those are our designated stops for our link bus service. So you can see there's connections that can be made between fixed route and that link service for probably a better coverage area in that shaded area of our city than we've really ever had, at least in the recent past during the evening. And then with that, the last slide I have is a quote from one of our riders, or I should say one of our customers actually, that uses our night service. And you can see that here, but this individual says, working the night shift at Chesapeake Arena used to mean walking nearly 5 miles before I even started my work day. Exhausted before I even started to work. Now that the bus runs later, I have time and energy to get food, run errands, so I can relax when I get home. And so I think, we captured this quote. We were able to get several quotes from some of our customers using the night service. But again, we are very pleased and thankful for the opportunity to leverage the funding that council provided in FY16 to be able to provide this service in the evening and help people get to and from work and wherever else they need to go during that time. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
All right. More questions?
I just had 2 quick questions.
Okay.
With regard to bus replacement, have we looked at what other cities are doing in terms of best practices? And
Well, again, we have, and it's kind of across the board. Again, a lot of cities have a dedicated transit funding.
Right.
A lot of cities get more support from the state. In fact, there are cities out there that don't even rely on the federal funding for their bus replacement because they have other funding sources. So there's a lot of different approaches out there, but right now, we're really working within the confines of what we can do from the federal side.
Great. And then just a big thank you to the mayor and the manager for the RTA funding. I think Norman passed their budget last night, including the funding, and I know lots of the smaller cities are doing the same, and so it's really a giant step forward in being able to look at a much bigger system. So thanks very much.
If we're not going to be involved, it's not going to make it. So Oklahoma City obviously has to be a major player in this.
And I also share Councilwoman Salyer's view for the regional transit system, because I think if we really truly try to maintain of being a big league city, we must have big league transportation. So I think it is a step in the right direction. So thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for making sure that the city is a part of the discussions, because without Oklahoma City, there is not a true regional transit system. So thank you all for your leadership.
I'd like to emphasize the importance of extending the night service on, is it Route 13 that goes to the community college?
Yes.
With their program of providing free college to all Oklahoma City and Western Heights School District graduates, there's no reason for anybody who wants to progress and obtain education beyond the high school level to have access to college. And those two-year degrees will get them in jobs where they're paying $50,000 and $60,000 to begin with. So it's a great opportunity for individuals who are in a difficult situation to improve themselves if they're just willing to work at it. Final comment, just to indicate that I'm a advocate for transit throughout the city. I think it's Route 5. What's the earliest that somebody could begin talking to EMBARK about getting a bus shelter put on Classen just south of 23rd Street? There's a Walgreens.
Okay.
And a lot of people congregate there and use the bus service, and a shelter at that location would be very helpful.
Thank you, David, at Ward 6.
Yes. Yeah, and I noticed Route 16 that I use, there's no shelters in plan, but maybe that could change.
Well, we have to prioritize somewhere.
No, I'd say the
so.
one on 23rd and Classen certainly needs one.
Yeah, we will. We'll put that on our list immediately and begin looking at it. Okay, thank you.